All right, time for Straight Up. 9 o'clock, right? My guest this evening, attorney at law, senior counsel, that is Roysdale Ford. And Roysdale Ford, I already got company, right? I already got company, but that's okay. Coming up, Roysdale Ford and former chairman of the Region 10, Sharma Solomon. So share the link and let's get ready to rock and roll this evening.
This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them lang loji, now you got them bongolo. Long time got them lang loji, now you got them bongolo. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them dirty down, now you got them concrete road. Long time got them dirty down, now you got them concrete road. Long time got them dirty down, now you got them concrete road. Long time got them dirty down, now you got them concrete road. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them jug lamp, now you got them electric light. Long time got them jug lamp, now you got them electric light. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them broad bottom, now you got them tight straight. Long time got them broad bottom, now you got them tight straight. Long time got them broad bottom, now you got them tight straight. Long time got them broad bottom, now you got them tight straight. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them broad churia, now you got them bamboo jai. Long time got them broad churia, now you got them bamboo jai. Long time got them broad churia, now you got them bamboo jai. Long time got them broad churia, now you got them bamboo jai. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time full and bucket water, now you got them overhead. Long time full and bucket water, now you got them overhead. Long time full and bucket water, now you got them overhead. Long time full and bucket water, now you got them overhead. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time got them old man, now you got them young guys. Long time got the old man, now you got them young guys. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. This ain't a long time, this ain't a long time, this not a before time. Long time.
The ditty we used to torment our teachers with when we were kids. It goes something like this. Onward, upward, Mary had a go. Day by day she tied it to a rope, till at length they got past the rope, and Miss Mary had to run behind it. We had a lot of fun with that, but do you actually know how beautiful these words are? Here's the Song of Guyana's Children by W. Hawley Bryant. Born in the land of the mighty Roraima, land of great rivers and far-stretching sea, so like the mountains, the sea, and the river, great, wide, and deep in our lives would we be. Onward, upward, may we ever go. Day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana sons and daughters can be. Born in the land of Kaiture's shining splendor, land of the palm tree, the croton and fern, we would possess all the virtues and graces, we all the glory of goodness would learn. Onward, upward, may we ever go, day by day, in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana sons and daughters can be. Born in the land where men sought El Dorado, land of the diamond and bright shining gold, we would build up by our faith, love, and labor God's golden city, which never grows old. Onward, upward, may we ever grow, day by day, in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana.
If you are looking to have your statutory declaration, affidavit of income, identity, damage or lost passport, lost license, tenancy agreement, agreement of settlement, power of attorney, last will and testament, and certification of documents, then you need to visit the Alistair Collins firm, located at the Killian Mall, 162 Lamaha Street, in Georgetown, between Camp and Waterloo Street. Alistair Collins is a commissioner of oaths and a justice of the peace. Make certain you visit him or call for more information at 649-6410 or 685-6448 or 503-1451. And there's adequate parking available. Go down to the Alistair Collins firm and have all of your legal issues settled and brought to the fore. Alistair Collins Firm. Contact them at Alistair Collins Firm.
All right. Hey, guess what? Good evening. My name is, I almost forgot, right? I almost start by saying my name is, and you guys know who that is, right? But to be more serious, my name is Mark Benjob. It's 8 minutes after 9 o'clock. We are going to rock and roll. We have two guests this evening, right? But before we get to that, let's just thank you guys for sharing the link. Spread it wide and far so that people can see what is happening here. You notice I already have a guest in the studio here peeping. And you know, when the kids are usually observing what you're doing, you just got to give them that chance, right? So it's okay. So look at this. You've got to support this business. That is the uniform business out there in Brooklyn. If you're a nurse or you're planning on being a nurse or whatever, just go and do your thing there and support that business on Church Avenue. You can't miss it. Church Avenue, 5606 Church Avenue. So go out and support the business there. Also, you got Andrew's Supermarket. Andrew's Supermarket there in Georgetown, Guyana. Go and support them and let them know that you appreciate what they're doing for the community. All right, good evening. Let me just let you guys know that this is Emma, but she's not my guest this evening. She just wants to say a quick hi to you whilst we prepare for our guest this evening. So you want to say a quick hi before you go? Come on, say a quick hi and then you go. Say hi. Okay, good. Bye-bye. Let that do his show now, right? Good. Thank you. It's Halloween. And speaking of Halloween, right? We saw those at some movie term. And now let me oops, thank you. Straighten my tie. But let me say this to you guys. In terms of any business, if you are going to do something, as in the case, mind you, I don't know. I got to ask Roysdale Ford, Senior Counsel. He's also Member of Parliament. Our operator, Levin, said that Mr. Roysdale Ford is in studio with us, along with Sharma Solomon, former chairman of Region Number 10. But I don't know, since when we have Halloween in Guyana? Can some of you guys tell me this? We actually have Halloween in Guyana. Sonia Rigby, what is going on? I know you celebrated your 72nd birthday just the other day, but Halloween in Guyana? Something, I don't know, Halloween in Guyana? Then we're going to get Thanksgiving. Then we're going to have 4th of July too. I don't know. Halloween in July. Halloween, sorry, in Guyana. Mark Garnett, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much, Mark Garnett. You seem to know where that business is, right? Thank you, Mr. Mark Garnett. I thank you so much, right? But we have Halloween in Guyana. We have President's Day in Guyana. We have 4th of July in Guyana. All sorts of things we have in Guyana. Lots of things we have in Guyana, right? So, I don't know. I'm not going to get the distraction tonight. Maybe when I was interviewing former Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, oops. No, she is distracted. She's gone. But it's little kids, right? So we gotta appreciate the fact that they come and see. And she heard that her dad is the biggest talk show host, radio talk show host in Guyana. So she just wanted to see what I do. Malcolm Luther. Malcolm Luther. Good evening to you, Malcolm. Good evening to all of you. And you know, I can't run through the list and say everybody's name, but I know who you are. I know you guys are with us. Vance Valadim. Good evening to you as well, and your beautiful wife. And just give her a hug for me. Tell your beautiful wife I say hi and that I love her very much. I can say this. She's my cousin. I thought I'd tease some of you guys for a moment. Hi, Charlene D. Uso. Gosh, I don't know, man. Look, I don't know. Let me bring my guest on. We haven't seen Mr. Sharma Solomon as yet. We're waiting to see his face, but we're getting ready to do some serious business here this evening, because that is what we do right here on 107.1 FM. Some serious business. This young man that you're watching that is on the screen, before I allow him to say anything, let me just remind this young man that I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. Even though there are a couple of times I may talk his name, and I'm sure a couple of times he may have talked my name, politically speaking, that is. When I was actually charged, a trumped-up treason charge, and when you look around in the courtroom, there was this young man. It was 2002, that trumped-up treason charge. It was this young man, Roysdale. I don't know, he looks like the type that his middle name would be Lansdale or something like that. But it's Roysdale. Mr. Ford, do you have a middle name?
Yes, Mark. It's Alton. Alton. Roysdale Alton Ford.
We always come up with these names, man. Alton. It's a good name, mind you. Mr. Ford, but on a serious note, just to let our listeners know that Mr. Ford was one of those lawyers, and he worked on my case pro bono for free. Pro bono, free. He worked on that case. Free. Right? I just want you guys to know that in New York, in the US, they have a popular lawyer, Alton Maddox. Good guy. Right? He was in the case with Tawana Brawley and all. Well, that was a controversial case, Mr. Maddox. So you have a nice middle name there. So I just want to say publicly again, thank you so much for what you did in terms of fighting for my freedom, and you worked for free. Not once did you approach and say you needed a cent. Thank you so much, Mr. Ford.
Mark, thank you very much and for acknowledging it. But I have to tell you thanks, because that was part of the learning process for me. I was able to see your resilience, and it affected me a lot in terms of how I perceive the struggle must go. And it was a very symbiotic relationship. You might have felt that I was only there to represent you, but I was actually taking strength and learning from your resilience during those years. So I thank you also.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ford, and thank you so much to our listeners as well, all around the world, all around in Guyana, who are listening. who are listening. And let me ask you. I've never asked you this here, but I think a couple days before Mr. Hoyt died, in fact, he was there in the courtroom on maybe 2 or 3 occasions, and he's one of the leaders. I can count some of them right now on my with my fingers. He was one of them that was actually in there in the courtroom. I can't recall where some others were, but I know who was in the struggle, who were in the struggle. But how did you get on that case? You just walked in or Mr. Hoyt made contact with you?
Mark, after the 1997 elections and the court proceedings that followed, I had developed through working with Mr. McKay's chambers back then, a very close
let me
relationship.
just one second, please, Mr. Ford. Forgive me. Let me just get an acknowledgement from our listeners. I see Apro Jen and Denise Booker and all these folks, Beverly. Are you guys hearing us loud and clear? Are you guys hearing Mr. Ford loud and clear? Or should he turn his volume up a little bit? Let me just get an acknowledgement from the folks to include our audience, mind you, before we proceed. All right, thank you guys so much, loud and clear. Mr. Ford, my apologies. They're hearing us loud and clear. Continue, sir. You were talking about when you became popular was when you accepted that elections petition case on behalf of the PNC in 1997. You were talking. Continue, sir.
Yes, Mark. I was saying that it was during that period that I developed a close relationship with Mr. Desmond Hoyt, the then leader of the People's National Congress Reform. And it was during many discussions that he pointed out your circumstances. And he suggested to me that it was very important for me to represent you and be part of that team. So I took his advice and I started coming to the mat. I don't think we even knew one another at those days.
No, we didn't. But I also sat. I believe I saw on television then Chancellor of the Judiciary, Desiree Bernard. During that case, in terms of your presentation, she actually praised you. She had a lot of good things to say about you. And that is when a lot of people got to know, those who didn't know you, that this lawyer, this up-and-coming bright young man was actually praised by Chancellor Desiree Bernard. How did you feel at that time, sir, about that?
I felt that my work was actually being acknowledged. I believe that it was a turning point in my career. The words of encouragement and endearment by the then Chief Justice, who later became Chancellor, actually propelled me forward and let me realize that maybe this is your calling. You could be a bit more committed to it and you will succeed in it. So I actually was quite pleased that I felt quite good about myself, I must say.
Okay, anybody would have done that. And not for you to get too full of yourself. A magistrate actually praised me too. She said, you know what? You're such a quiet prisoner in the dock, right? All right, so Mr. Ford, let's get down to some business here, sir. But before we get into that, let me just, and the point in making about your appearance in the elections, the 1997 elections petition case on behalf of the People's National Congress. In fact, it was Esther Pereira who filed that on behalf of the PNC. I got to meet Esther. Were you privileged to meet Esther as well, a humble lady from Sophia?
Yes, I was privileged to meet Esther. She was quite, I haven't seen her recently, but she was a very committed member of our party, as far as I recall.
Yes, very committed.
Strong.
Very committed, very strong indeed. Esther Pereira, if she is still around with us, I hope she is. Good evening to you, Esther. And so you are not a Johnny-come-lately on the battlefield, the political battlefield and the legal field. You're not a Johnny-come-lately at all. You have been around, right? But before we get into all of that, Give us a little background as to who Roysdale Alton Forde is. Georgetown guy, quarantine guy, Myconi guy, Linden guy, and how you got into this profession. Did you always want to be a lawyer?
Roysdale Ford grew up in Georgetown, in Kingston. My father was a policeman. Eventually rose to be a senior superintendent. So we lived in the Ivleary area. My mother worked hard to assist in making the ends meet for the family. So many persons, Mark, will see me now as a lawyer, as a senior counsel, but think that I come from some moneyed existence and some moneyed class. But I grew up in a very ordinary Guyanese family during the years, challenging times as they were. So that was Roysdale Ford. My parents always instilled in me the importance of education. I'm the fifth child, the last of five. And I took advantage of the opportunities that my family sacrificed to provide and my family afforded me. I started off at Stella Maris Primary School, and I went to St. Rose's High School. Then I went to Bishop's High School where I did the A-levels. Then I started the course of the LLB degree in 1992, graduating with a Bachelor of Laws with credit in 1995 and graduating from the Wooding Law School in 1997 at the age of 23. So that has been my background. The ordinary Guyanese family I'm coming from.
Ordinary Guyanese family from Kingston. Kingston, you probably want to know how I know you're from Kingston, right? Somebody out there in the audience know that. So you're Kingston.
Yes, I'm
right?
a Kingston man.
Yeah, but a Kingstonian. So you always wanted to, or you knew from a very tender age that you would become a lawyer?
I always wanted to be a lawyer. But as I got older, I vacillated between studying history, which I had a deep passion for, and economics, which I studied at A-levels. But I settled down back on my original desire to be a lawyer, and I believe it is my calling.
It is your calling indeed. And even during your time there, your sojourn into the PNC. Mr. Hoyt, apart from Chancellor Desiree Bernard, then Chancellor, she was Chief Justice, praised you. Mr. Desmond Hoyt seemed to have had a lot of confidence in young Roysdale Alton Forde. How that relationship started, sir?
The relationship started, Mark, with Mr. McKay summoning myself and another young colleague at the time, telling us to go to Congress Place and to meet with Mr. Hoyt. He wants us to do some legal work for the party. I remember going back to the front room, wondering to myself, Mr. McKay actually serious? We must go to see Mr. Hoyt. And I remember going up to Congress Place. We drove up there, and he was nothing that I thought that he would have been, because, Mark, I remember being in Jamaica when Forbes Burnham died and listening on the radio to the fact that this man, Desmond Hoyt, is becoming the president of Guyana. And going up, you listening and you're seeing this man who's the president of Guyana, and actually getting to meet him for the first time was quite an experience. But he turned out to me to be a very warm, fatherly figure. He was able to provide all sorts of guidance. Mr. Hoyt, many persons don't know, apart from the fact that he was a lawyer, he was not an ordinary lawyer. He was an erudite lawyer. The law reports are replete with many cases that he did. So we were able to form a relationship as lawyers, as an experienced lawyer, and as the leader of the party. He was able to provide me with encouragement to get more involved from time to time. And I became a friend to Mr. Hoyt. I mean, sometimes I used to wonder, how could he ask me to pronounce or provide advice on some very complex issues he would call and ask me, but I would give my advice, and it was quite a strong friendship we had developed.
Would you say it is because of that kind of like got you closer to the PNC and closer to politics? Or was that part of your passion as well? Politics, that is.
I believe that my family has always been strong supporters of the People's National Congress, as it was back then. And I would go with my mother to meetings in the Kingston Party Group area. Um, so I was always associated with the party. I would always be there with the women and they're planning their activities and so on. But certainly the exposure to Mr. Hoyt proved quite important as an opportunity to bring me closer formally to the party. So I believe that it was a very fruitful relationship we had developed in that regard.
So you've been around for a while, so to speak, as young as you are. So for anybody who might see you as and I do really mean anybody, I'm not throwing shade or shades at one particular person, but for some people who may just probably now hearing some of the things that you have done and your participation in a lot of things behind the scene for the PNC, especially lots of pro bono cases, not only my case, not only the fact that you were on the 97 elections petition case, you have done a lot of other pro bono cases for the party.
Yes, Mark, that is true. I've used my expertise, and it was an opportunity for me to defend the party, defend its members, its supporters, and to provide them with the sort of legal representation that the issues and the party required at different times.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this: what would be your response to someone or anyone who would look at you and say that you are newbie, you are newcomer, you're Johnny come lately? What would be your response, sir?
I believe it is an unfortunate statement. I believe it's the sort of statement that should not be made at all in relation to young persons, whether by age or by membership in the People's National Congress reform. It is a sort of exclusionary statement which would seek to push people away. But in relation to myself, I know how long I've been around. I know I've been committed. I've been part of the party. So the statement has no merit. It has no substance. And I will not take it seriously. It will not deter me from continuing the work that I plan to do for the party and supporting the party in its path to get back into government.
All right, well said. And so I asked that because Mr. Aubrey Norton, who's running for the leadership of the party, leader of the PNCR, he responded to that question and he said that it was twisted. That's not what he said in the newspaper report. Mr. Aubrey Norton also said that he called you and had a very cordial or so a nice conversation with you about the issue. What was that conversation like, if you mind sharing it, since he said that?
Well, Mark, I did receive a call from Mr. Norton. I believe I had missed the call and I returned the call to him. The conversation was very brief, and I pointed out to him quite clearly that I saw a few moments ago before he had called that he had issued a statement that I found unacceptable and improper, and that the proper thing he should have done, he should have called me first. Aubrey Norton is not someone that I don't know. I've known Aubrey Norton for 20-something years. We've always enjoyed a very respectful and warm friendship and relationship. And the fact that I now support Joseph Harmon for the leadership of the People's National Congress reform, I don't believe it should have affected his perception of our friendship. And that I communicated that to him.
And that was the nature of, he never denied, or did he accept making that statement, or there was no denial of it?
I can't remember in the conversation Mr. Norton denying it. I can't recall. I don't want to say anything that would
Fair
be
enough.
untrue.
So there's no bad blood between you, because you have represented him also with party matters.
No, there's no bad blood. One of the unfortunate things is that we see certain newspapers seeking to twist words, seeking to twist things that are said. Mark, you would be aware that at the launch of Mr. Harmon, I said a couple of things. And I had the notes here that I actually said word for word. And what I said, Mark, is that a leader that is divisive and a leader that is perceived to be divisive cannot advance the cause of the supporters and much more the people of Guyana. And a leader that is a tribalist or cannot advance the cause of the people of Guyana. Now, Mark, you know, I found the reaction by Mr. Norton very sad and unfortunate. And it actually was a cause for some dismay on my part. What I've said, Mark, I don't believe it warranted the sort of misinterpretation um, that resulted in it. I believe during our brief conversation, Mr. Norton pointed out to me that he felt that I was referring to him um, in my statement. But
Were
Mark,
you?
what?
Were you though?
No, no, I wasn't, Mark.
Okay,
I wasn't.
go ahead.
Mark, what I was simply saying to the person's president and to the country and to the world is that the party must recognize what is among its original mission, one of its immutable principles, which is to be inclusive. The concept of social cohesion that Mr. Granger championed over the last 5 or 8 years or more was not a peculiar concept created by Mr. Granger. Our party has always projected itself and always considered itself to be an inclusionary party. So for Mr. Norton, who considers himself a Burnhamite, I found it unfortunate that he would have responded to something so necessary and so important. And I have been told that it was inappropriate to say at that time. But Mr. Benschop, you would know that this is a time when we are seeking to elect new leadership to the party. And I found it important that the new leadership must understand what the party is about. Now, you might be aware, Mark, that in 1964, Forbes Burnham, the founder of the party, said this after he was sworn in as prime minister: this government holds all the people of this country are equally important, whether they belong to a large group or a small group. To us, the Amerindians are important. To us, the Chinese are important. To us, the Portuguese are important. To us, the Europeans are important. To us, the mixed races are important. To us, the Africans are important. To us, the Indians are important. In short, all Guyanese are important and valued members of our community, and we cherish them and consider that as a government, it's our duty and privilege to guard and protect and further the real interests of all. So what I've said, Mark, does not stand in contradiction with the principles set out by the founder of this party. And, you know, earlier tonight, I was told that Mr. Henry Jeffrey was on a talk show.
Comrades,
What
fellow
was that?
Guyanese,
Yeah.
9 years ago, we Guyanese made
Sorry about that. Our operator actually pulled that one up quickly so that the people can hear that speech, but it's not the time for that. My apologies. You were saying, sir.
No, I was saying, Mark, that, you know, I was told that Mr. Henry Jeffrey was on a show, the David Hines show, along with Dennis Chabrol and Adam Harris and the host. And Henry Jeffrey articulated the view that I was somehow courting or pandering to the business community because I was now seeking probably to represent the business community's interests because of the militancy of Mr. Norton. But, you know, it's amazing that Henry Jeffrey in the Village Voice News in his article, Future Notes, on the 17th of October 2021, under the title Wishing Aubrey Norton Well, says that Aubrey Norton himself wishes to broaden the ethnic base of the party. So what is wrong with what I've said? I believe that it is unfortunate that there was such a reaction on something that is so important and something that is such at the core of the People's National Congress reform, which is inclusionary arrangements, inclusionary policies, and representing the interests of all.
All right. It's unfortunate that Mr. Norton took umbrage to that. I also, in equal measures, on the other side of the coin, do you take umbrage with Mr. Aubrey Norton for saying that he doesn't have skeletons in his closets, probably inferring that other candidates may have skeletons in the closet. Do you see it that way, of him throwing stones at the other opponents, the other candidates?
Mark, we are in the midst of a campaign, um, and you have to expect some degree of shade um, to be tossed around. Um, but certainly, Mr. Norton is obviously saying that he is a candidate with great integrity, and making an allusion probably to other persons who he believes are unfit to hold the office.
But you don't take umbrage to that.
No, no, I don't. I don't.
All right, well said. Let's get to your endorsement of Mr. Harmon, Joseph Frederick Harmon. A lot of folks thought that you would have gotten in the race also to run for the leadership of the party. It happened that on that day they saw you there, you spoke, and you endorsed Mr. Joseph Frederick Harmon. Do you believe that Mr. Harmon is the right person right now to take the party in the direction of which you spoke of earlier, inclusionary politics and broad base, and bring people who are on the fence and other ethnic groups and so forth within the folds of the party? Is he the man for the job? If so, why?
Well, Mark, as I said the night when I spoke, I share a friendship both with Aubrey Norton and Joseph Harmon. And it was not an easy task to endorse one and not the other. And I thought deeply about it. And I believe that on certain criteria that I had set out, which was the faithfulness to the party, the distinguished record of service, respect for authority, and whether you have ever abandoned the party, was a sufficient and logical basis for me to analyze in a very objective way how I perceived and who I should endorse. And this is an endorsement within the context of two friends. Aubrey Norton is my friend. We have disagreements. We've always had disagreements, and we've had many agreements. So I don't want the public to feel that me and Aubrey at war, look how the war in, right? But intelligent people could arrive at different conclusions, be respectful to each other. And after going through that process, Mark, I felt that Harmon was the better candidate at this time to move the party in the direction that I thought that it should go. So I hope that that is an answer to your question.
What would you say to folks who, in grading Mr. Joseph Harmon and judging him as an opposition leader, to say that he has not over the year demonstrated what it takes to be an effective leader? And a lot of folks are judging Mr. Harmon on that 1 year as opposition leader. Do you think that those who perceive him to be a weak opposition leader, and by virtue of that, he cannot be a strong leader of the party, do you think that's a fair assessment of him?
Well, first, let us start off at the question of Mr. Joseph Harmon as a leader of the opposition. I believe that Mr. Harmon has led a new cohort of MPs, many of whom have been in Parliament, including myself, for the first time. And Mr. Harmon has been an effective leader of the opposition in relation to his management of the cohort in terms of articulating policies and providing, though limited, extremely limited, and under very challenging circumstances, resources to get a great amount of the work done by the party.
Yeah. Sorry about that, Mr. Ford. I got you.
Yeah.
And you yourself, moving away from the candidate that you have endorsed, which is your right, and you're entitled to that. Nobody should beat you with a baseball bat or a cricket bat to support a candidate that they want or they think is the best candidate. It is not democracy. You're entitled to that. Other people are also entitled to their views, and I hope that they will be respectful of that. But go ahead, sir. You were making a point.
Yes, Mark. Now let us examine what Mr. Harman would have done. Um, and I believe the period of 1 year as a leader of the opposition is an insufficient benchmark to solely judge him on. Um, Mark, I judge the man over the entire period in which he was actively involved in the PNC. Mr. Harman led the campaign, electoral campaign in 2011, 2015, 2020. During the period of the recount in 2020, Mr. Harman was at the forefront, providing guidance, direction, articulating policies, and setting the tone and the agenda of um, the recount process and of the PNC at that time. So he has demonstrated leadership at that time. And Mark, over the years, over that 10-year period preceding 2020, Mr. Harman ran for the chairmanship of the People's National Congress Reform, and he lost to Valda Lawrence. He did not go vanishing into twilight. He remained committed to the party, and he invested his resources, his time, and his effort to improve the infrastructure of the party by constructing 3 or 4, I believe, new Congress houses across the country. And I believe that is the sort of depth of the man that you have to really analyze to see what it is that he brings to the table.
And you do believe, based on that assessment, he has a lot to offer and a lot to bring to the political table, so to speak?
I believe so, Mark. I believe so.
All right. Mr. Roysdale Forde, our guest this evening, Member of Parliament. Let's move on now. You yourself, you're running for maybe some top office at Congress come December 11. Can you explain which office and why you think you are the best person for that position?
Well, Mark, I can only run if I'm nominated.
Fair enough.
So assuming that I'm nominated for the chairmanship or any other executive position in the party, I will certainly accept the nomination and I will run for whatever office I've been nominated for. Mark, I believe that at this peculiar stage of the country's history, peculiar stage of the party and what it demands, I believe that I bring to bear a level of commitment to the country as a whole, a level of commitment to the party. I believe it's time that the party becomes nimble, becomes a bit more transparent, becomes a bit more grounded in terms of new policies and a new agenda to make the party inclusive, more attractive to people across the country. Whilst at the same time not abandoning its base and its core supporters, I believe that the party must articulate a policy that will see that the party itself becomes a financially viable institution. And at the same time, we must ensure that policies are put in place, whether in opposition or in government, to ensure that the people benefit from this newfound resource of the wealth of the oil, that every person could easily and equitably access the resources to actually have a better life. And that is the vision that I see for myself in the party, and particularly the role that I would like to play in the party going forward.
You know, Mr. Forde, I honestly do wish you all the best in that position if you're nominated, whether it's chairman, vice chairman, or whatever position. I wish you the very best, and this is coming from my heart.
Thank you very much.
I wish that young people like you would have also thrown your hat in the race for leader of the party, but maybe next time around. Having said that, let me give you an opportunity for your closing remarks and to say whatever you want to say that I may have failed to ask you. Go ahead.
Mark, you could have asked many more questions. But at this stage, I want to thank you for allowing me to come on this show. You have always been a good host and a good friend. But I believe that the membership of the People's National Congress must understand that this is an election for them. We have seen, because of the circumstances we live in and the technology age that we live in, we've seen the impact of Facebook and all sorts of social media interfaces and devices. But what this is coming down to is the future of the party, the future of your children and grandchildren, and the assurance that you participate in a process, both at a party level and a national level, that would advance your interests. And I believe that myself, as an individual, brings tremendous skill and expertise to bear for the benefit of the party. And I believe certainly that the team that I've endorsed, led by Mr. Harmon, will result in the advancement of the interests of the people of the party and the country as a whole.
Well said, Mr. Roysdale Ford, a lawyer who has dedicated his life for people. Of course, he made some money too, because you don't expect lawyers not to make money. But you have done a tremendous amount of pro bono work for party people, members of the PNCR, and others who are not members of the PNCR. Thank you so much for your time. And again, I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Intelligent and dedicated young people like you. And I say young people like you, and I really do mean it. Your heart is in the right place. But some people are saying your endorsement, but that's your endorsement. You're entitled to that. But your heart is in the right place as it pertains to the party and the country. God bless you, sir.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. Coming up next, we have, that's Mr. Roysdale Ford, but coming up next, we have Mr. Sharma Solomon, former chairman of region number 10. He is with us. Our operator has said that he is with us. He's ready to rock and roll. But I want to say this. I shouldn't have to be saying this every night. Don't expect me to be a host who is prepared at this point in time to support somebody that you support. And not because I ask questions that you don't like about your guy in the race means that I don't like. Y'all got to stop it. Stop it. Just stop it. Stop it. It is childish. It is childish. Stop it. Some of you know who you are. Stop it. Gosh, good evening to all of you. Just stop it. Stop being childish. It is my job to ask questions. It is my job to probe these candidates. I have no horse in the race. Absolutely none. At least not at this point in time. Maybe closer to the elections of Congress. Maybe. But as of now, I don't have a horse in the race. Don't try to corner me, some of you who are supporting Aubrey Norton, and to think that because I'm not praising him enough for you, that I dislike him. But let me say this before I bring my next guest on. Aubrey and I are friends. We talk behind the scene. And I don't have to tell you guys this. I advise him on some things behind the scene. Is that a person who hates Aubrey Norton? Come on. Y'all stop it. Please do. Stop it. Sherwin Green, tell some of your folks to stop it. Let me bring my good friend, and I don't know why this guy is not in the race, man. Honestly. Now, because I say I don't know why this guy is not in the race, means that, oh, Benchop don't like Aubrey. Aubrey's already in the race. Why Benchop wants other people to be in the race? You know? Oh, my gosh. Mr. Solomon, good evening to you, man. Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mark. Hope you can hear me well. Good evening to your audience and to your guest, Mr. Ford. How are you doing, sir?
Mr. Ford is gone, but good to see you this evening. Let's get straight down to business, man. Let's get straight down to business. Party Congress coming up. You're not a member of the party. They haven't renewed your membership card. I don't know what the heck is going on, because even if your card was renewed, I'm sure you would have been running for some position. I don't know. What's going on with your card, sir? Go ahead.
Thanks for the question first, Mark. And let me say that this is not. I recall even in 2014, not only as a candidate, but as a delegate, while contesting for the leadership of the party, I wasn't even afforded through the accreditation committee a delegate card, a badge. And from then on to now, I haven't even received a party card. Those were some of the things we had mentioned in 2014 that we believe the party needs to change with regards to its treatment, not only of its own members, but its view of membership. And for those people who would want to be welcomed by the party, we believe that those sort of behaviors were not going to bring people to the party. They weren't progressive in its behavior and attitude. And I recall of recent, while checking up on my membership only in this week, I was told by someone that there is absolutely no record of myself and either Ms. Kisoon as being members of the party. So I just want to make that point based on some of the things that we've recognized all the way back in 2014. And I believe those are some of the things that once changed, we can see some more progressive behavior and attraction of the party with regards to its membership and attracting the sort of membership that will take it to that victorious direction it seeks to move in. And just as you said, the fact is, if the membership was sorted out, I hold against anyone, including myself, the affordability that the party as a vanguard party gives to every member, as I believe it does from member to leader, the opportunity to vie for any position that is available in the party. So one should not hold against anyone who seeks the aspirations to be able to be part of the leadership structure, even as a member, because the party and the party constitution allows for that.
All right, well said. I mean, your party card has not been renewed. And I have said this many a times, months ago, and I'll continue to say it. It's a shame and a disgrace that your party card has not been renewed. Miss Vanessa Kisoon, former member of parliament, her party card has not been renewed because I'm sure that she would have thrown her hat in the race, not necessarily for leader, but for vice chairman, for chairman, for something. And she would have gotten the support of the people because she has been there with the people, because she has been serving the people, because she is a trooper, she is a soldier. And that is the type of people who ought to be elected into positions. And were you a member right now, officially, with your party card, would you have thrown your hat in the race? If so, which position?
I made this point quite clear early in the year, Mark. I needed to see those things change that would have allowed me to be part of the process. I haven't seen them so far, as I said, only this week. And I just saw a comment from Ms. Vanessa Kisoon saying that she too have not gotten her membership and her card. Those things have not changed. And those things don't hold well for confidence. So I said early in the year, if we don't, it would be a repeat of 2014. And unfortunately, I hope we don't head in that direction. But I still hold the same view. I would appreciate to ensure the work that we are doing resonates with the membership, and to really empower our membership so that they can appreciate their worth, to have delegates who would attend this Congress, and not those delegates being selected and handpicked to gravitate to a particular candidate or leader. And because those changes have not been made, it's difficult for me to say at this moment if that, in a hypothetical way that you put that question, would be responded to in the positive or the affirmative. However, for the candidates who are contesting, I think they too may have their own ideas about how the accreditation of membership and delegates are working out. But I maintain, like I did in 2014, my concerns that those things must be fixed. I don't think it is only for myself and Ms. Kisoon, but I am certain for many other persons who are, and intend to become members, they have that sort of frustration. It should not be at this time of Congress that we are frustrating members, because in the wider picture of moving forward in a national election, every single soldier becomes a warrior, and we will need every warrior on board to take us to victory.
Well said, Mr. Sharma Solomon. Well said. A man who served as the regional chairman for number 10, region number 10. I wouldn't want to use the term kicked out of the party, but you were removed as a member of the party. I see a question here from Lorraine Stephen. It says, Mr. Solomon, what is the problem? A story has many sides. Why were you removed as a member of the party? Briefly, please, briefly explain to our listeners.
Well, I give people the opportunity to ask those who are in control of the machinery. I would first put that to them. That question should be asked. Many of the persons who are contesting for leadership are part of the structure. They are part of the establishment. These are motions that could be moved in the very simplest of manner. More so the issue regarding Ms. Kisoon. At any statutory executive meeting, if people wanted, after 7 years of what they may call being in political isolation, I continue to say to people, maybe well-rested isolation, because I don't feel any way outside of the political fray. We are here on your show. We are speaking to politicians. We are speaking to party members. We are still engaged in the process in many ways of how we can add to the progressive advancement of our party. But I will say more so than anything else, quite frankly, our presence threatens a lot of people with regards to how we were perceived in the wider public and how we were accepted. I could recall in 2014 when we contested, we had mobilized Region 10 to the point where we took 120 delegates to Congress. It was the most representative to be taken to Congress any given time from Region 10, and second behind Region 4, which is the largest populated region by number. And besides that, we were not, at least I was, for party leader, nominated by 13 party groups to be party leader. So I can appreciate where some of the hesitation would have arrived from with regards to my acceptance, and maybe what people perceived as a threat to the status quo, and more so people's position that they believe is a God-given right for them to have. But like I said before, this comes down to the membership. And I always say, if the membership is given a fair opportunity, not only to be accredited to stand in these positions, but if the membership across the country and all the groups are given a fair opportunity to participate in the process, I am certain some of those who believe they have a God-given right would appreciate the voice of the membership to say, not necessarily so.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Norton. Sorry.
Yes, I know.
My apologies. My apologies. I get some of Norton people, them jittery out there, because every time I mention Aubrey's name, they're like, oh God, what bench up talking about Mr. Norton? No. My apologies, Mr. Solomon.
It's
So
okay.
are you saying that, and do forgive me, people want to know exactly why was your membership taken away? Why? What did you do?
We did nothing. Like I said, I will not ascribe to anything that we did not do. We did our jobs. We played our part. We continue to do so, whether it was in 2011, 2015, 2020, even without a membership, even without a recognition from the most senior officials in the party. We were called by senior officials in the party and asked to give service, which we did. And we did so by participating on many of the platforms to speak, to engage, to have the mobilization of the grassroots and the wider communities across Guyana to have an understanding of why the coalition was the best direction to go in. So I will not accept that we did anything except that our presence may have felt or may come across as a threat to some people who thought that, again, that they are more deserving at this point than we are. I could recall, and I could sympathize with some of what Mr. Forde said earlier about people saying it is not your time. I remember that was a very prominent and most prevalent chat that was being circulating around certain party circles, that we were new, we were neophytes. Who were these people? Where they now come from? So I can appreciate how intimidating that would have been, and I know that is still something that intimidates even today. So not having my membership, and in fact, to the extent that on record, persons can claim that they haven't seen any record of membership for me, is not only a dismay of myself, but I'm certain it will resonate with so many people who were prepared to give support to the party in the wider context beyond this Congress.
You did say earlier that there are even folks who are running for the leadership of the party were very quiet on this issue. You can just probably read between the lines.
Well, I know what you're saying, Mark. Like I said, I can appreciate for myself, but I think what is more telling is you hear many persons and you see many persons who are demonstrating that they're prepared to have the presence of a Solomon and a Kisoon back in the party. I can say to you, those things can be done at a statutory meeting of the Central Executive.
But it was never done. It was never done. And a lot of them don't want you guys in the race. Story done. That's my position. If anybody out there get vexed, well, so be it. They'll be back tomorrow and straight up, and they'll make up with me and start smiling. There's a bigger reason why they don't want a Sharma Solomon or a Vanessa Kisoon now. But they're saying after they are elected, or if they're elected leader, they're going to deal with that right away, but not now. But you are saying, Mr. Solomon, that can be done now and not after.
That's a motion to be passed at a meeting. Any member can raise that motion. It's seconded and it's carried. That's simple as what it is.
You know, but Mr. Solomon, you are not a member of the party. At least you don't have a party card.
No.
Miss Vanessa Kisoon is not a member. She doesn't have a party card. But yet in the 2015 elections, all of the leaders were up there, including my good friend David Arthur Granger and all the other leaders of the coalition. They were up there. They were holding your hands. They were holding Miss Kisoon's hands. You guys were hugging. You guys were dancing on the stage in Linden. They didn't know that you guys didn't have a party card, and that possibly they were denying you guys that party card when they rushed to Linden for votes, and you guys supported the party. You guys never left the party. You never gone anywhere else. You never flirted anywhere else. You stuck it through with the party. You showed that you guys are true soldiers. You're committed. But they needed y'all vote. They needed the people of Region 10 vote. So they rushed there.
Mark, I think you're making the point of a card and the process, which is very simple. And I know persons that many times don't make it quite easy. So simple don't mean easy, but it's a very trivial matter. However, our commitment, more so my commitment, runs deeper than just the presence of my involvement in the 2015, 2011, 2020. We were there, campaigns. Our history, my history in this party runs as far back as 1992 in helping to deal with the issue of the mayoral elections, to deal with the issue of regional campaigning. I was there when we had our brother Abdul Kadir as the mayor of Linden in 92. So our commitment extends beyond many of the people who are now seeing our presence and the visibleness that we have. I think we took the opportunity to be groomed. We took the opportunity to mature. And when people recognize our presence, it was after we would have acquired and accommodated those issues that would have made us the sort of politicians, made us the sort of committed party members that you see today. That notwithstanding some people's treatment, it is beyond that. Our commitment is more to the bigger picture of what Forbes Burnham Party represents, more so the People's National Congress and what it can do for Guyana.
Well said. Sharma Solomon with us this evening, 6 minutes after 10 o'clock. We still got some more questions for Mr. Solomon. We still have some more questions. When you became the chairman of Region 10, you got right out on the stage. People just loved you because of your youthfulness, your intellect, and your grounding with the people. You're a grassroots kind of guy. You are well-rounded politically speaking, right? Who would you say is responsible or was responsible for you to get on the big stage, political stage, so to speak?
Mark, I just give recognition to some of the people that in the 90s, early 90s, we've been working with. Mr. Adams, Brother Adams, his name, we know him as Brother Ali Bieshti, Brother Abdul Kadir. But my grounding with the grassroots started more as a social activist. My presence in the football fraternity lasted for over a decade as the General Secretary of the Upper Demerara Football Association. I have been twice elected as president of the Upper Demerara Football Association, which represents the largest constituency of youth following across Linden and Region 10. So my grounding is deeper than politics or even before politics with regards to how we have been embraced by the community and the work we have done in the community. I remember in 2010, my cousin Leon Roberts, who then worked very close with the then chairman, Mr. Mortimer Mingo, had asked that if I can take that sort of organizational skills that I was working with the football fraternity and transmitted that to some level of political help that they had needed at the time. And I had agreed. So I was co-opted in the party, in fact, on the campaign, the 2011 campaign, as the organizing secretary, of which Mr. Mingo was the campaign chair. Unfortunately, there was an issue with Mr. Mingo, and members of the campaign committee that we had established, some concerns with that, and it was put to a vote. It was put to a vote, which I won 7-3. After members had asked that I be the campaign chair. And it was in that process of that vote, I was moved up to the campaign chairmanship of the party. And that anointing came through the leader, Mr. Granger at the time, after the membership said to him that this is what they would like to have and would like to see. A week after Mr. Granger came, in fact, Mr. Granger was at that meeting where that vote was taken. At the party office just before I was conferred as campaign manager. So I have always had to face the process of being challenged and challenging to be ascending to these positions. It was never easy. It was never given pass by any individual. I took that as an opportunity based on how we work closely with people to work with all that came on board. We immediately got down to ensuring that every individual that made themselves available to work with the campaign in 2011, be it Ms. Kisoon, who was there as a member of parliament the years before, our local campaign organizers, and even the coordinator who was sent to work with us, Mr. Aubrey Norton. We embraced every individual, and it was a very collective team spirit in 2011 that we moved forward to work to build the campaign and to put Region 10 in a position. If you can recall, in 2006, we had lost a seat, which was stolen by the PPP. a petition would have eventually showed that the AFC should have gotten that seat. But it was the first time that Region 10, under the PNC, had lost one of its regional seats. So we came back and we got about 9,000, whereas in 2006, the votes were just about 7,000. We got about 9 to 12,000, votes that we had regained the second seat for the party. And I think we did that not only in bringing more membership on, but the campaign itself was run in a very independent manner in that we were able to raise a lot of funds and resources because people saw that newness and that sort of encouragement to involve others in the campaign. We had some very good friends who were prepared to, outside of the general party structure, lend us support. So it was a very collective, involved effort by many people.
I'm glad that you've mentioned that, a collective effort by many people. I saw how you guys ran the 2011 campaign. Lots of hands were on deck, lots of hands. But I say kudos to young, you guys were younger then, yourself and Ms. Vanessa Kisoon and other young people who were able to bring home that collectively. Not a one man did that, but collectively brought home that victory for the PNCR in 2011. Congratulations to you guys for that. You brought home the victory also in 2020 as well, 2015. In 2015 as well. And so yes, you guys continued to collectively bring home that victory. Let's touch on Sam Hinds, the former prime minister. He sits in Washington, D.C., representing Guyana as the country's ambassador. I don't know. He said a lot of things last night that were unfortunate. Where should we start? Should we start with that stolen seat out there in Linden and how he tried to portray the coalition now as though that they are riggers? He tried to basically, embarrass Mr. Mingo without any evidence. But when put forward the evidence that the PPP actually stole that seat in 2006, I bet he couldn't handle that sort of evidence. What is your take on the stealing of that seat in Sam Hinds?
Well, first, Mark, I'd want to say thanks for the opportunity to have that brief interjection in that interview last night. I think you could not have used a more apt phrase of it being most unfortunate for the claims being made by Sam Hinds. But I think I started the interview first by saying it is important that our ambassador, who is now Ambassador Hinds, could appreciate that notwithstanding different views that are on your program, that he is still afforded the opportunity to share his views. And one could only imagine Sam Hinds, who denied, and his government at the moment is denying the people of Linden and Region 10, and in the wider context, Guyana, the opportunity to share their views on state media and media controlled by the government. So I think in that light, the appreciation of having Sam Hinds on your program demonstrated what a good lesson Sam Hinds can take back to his government with reference to ensuring that there is freedom of speech, which is enshrined in our constitution. The opportunity given to him should be given to every Guyanese. Those remarks made by Sam Hinds reflected not only a gentleman who's out of touch with what role he played as prime minister, but one should not forget that that seat allowed him to also be a member of parliament for the region and the community. And I heard quite clearly you ask what tangibles Sam Hinds did for the community. I heard him peg back to the bauxite company. And I recall you asking in same manner with reference to the bauxite company. This was when they sold that company to Omai, for $1 million US. Omai would have taken their machinery that they were using in the gold mining sector, got a loan, and sold the company in under a few years for over $30 million. So there was no favor done by Sam Hinds and his government, even that which he tried to claim as a tangible, as something of substance for the community. So not only that could be dismissed, but Sam Hinds was unable to even say what else he did for the community and went to the broader picture of what he did, which again, he could not have justified. So on that level, just to be given the opportunity to express himself on your show, and then when given the opportunity to do so, could not have even said what tangibles he brought to the community he should have so represented, I think just shows the deficiency of Sam Hinds as someone who represented not only Linden, not only Region 10 and Guyana, but who was there to even act as a bridge between the race and the divide that we see exist between our races today.
You know, it's ironic that Samuel Hinds, out of Linden rescued him when he walked all the way from Maikoni to Linden, and Lindeners rescued him. The bauxite industry rescued him. He lived off of free electricity for many, many years right there in Linden. It's so unfortunate that he actually turned his back on Linden and punished the people of Linden and by extension Region 10 economically and otherwise. How do you feel when he tries to justify or to give the impression that he has done something tangible for the people of Region 10? Where is that?
It is most disheartening. Sam Hinds acted as the prime minister in a minority government, and to the point of the 2011 campaign and the victory that we brought to the region, not only won that seat back, but the numbers demonstrated that Region 10 brought the PPP government to a minority status. What was the repayment for the region? The repayment for the region was the removal of tariffs from the electricity issue, so that we can pay a 1,500% increase in electricity rates. Now, one of the things I always remind people to note is that this wasn't an intention. This was already an action because persons were already paying increase in electricity. In fact, bills with high increase had already started to arrive for people to pay those bills. It was Sam Hinds who brought that bill to the floor. It was Sam Hinds. The sole responsibility and the payback, not only by the PPP government, but this claimed son of the soil who worked the bauxite company, who more than anyone else knew the dynamics of the electricity generation and distribution issue of the region as being excess from the bauxite company, and that is what the community got and paid for, had nothing to do with GPL. To this date, we are still not on the grid of GPL, would have even conceptualized and supported such an idea to bring such a burden to the people. So to listen to Sam Hinds speak about what that meant, it was most unfortunate. And I think rightly so, in fact, rightly so, the people responded by denying not only his presence in the region, but even his government's position to impose such a draconian measure on people for their response at an election.
You know, it's funny also that in 2011, when they were in Parliament, he actually, and in an interview with me, he actually said that the almost $2 billion or a little over $2 billion of subsidy for electricity there in Linden, Sam Hinds actually referred to it as burdensome on taxpayers. And it is something that should be wiped away. But yet, tens of billions of dollars in the sugar industry that is even far more burdensome to taxpayers of Guyana, that he seems to be accepting that.
Before you get to that though, Mark, it was Sam Hinds who accepted that Linden is not in a position. He recognized by his own words, Linden is a depressed, Linden is a state of economic downturn with the retrenchment that occurred within the 90s and even the late 80s. Linden was not in a position that demonstrated economic expansion in any sector, whether manufacturing or agriculture. Linden today still imports. Linden have not demonstrated where it has the capacity, more so under government for 23 years that Sam Hinds led as the prime minister and at times even as president, showing its capacity where it did in the early 80s and even in the 70s, where we had the Berbice River Project and we produced massive amount of food, where we had a thriving, a very rich bauxite sector that not only took care of Linden and Region 10, but the rest of the country. So before we even get to the unequal treatment within other sectors, I think there was an acknowledgement that the community itself was not in a position to deal with any economic burden. Then you go to the unequal treatment. As recent as September, last month, you had sugar workers, and ever so often, sugar workers demonstrating and protesting for different reasons. And every time they do so, we see that even the CEO of Gaisuko is saying that the salaries of sugar workers moved to the point of over 102% of what it is that they actually, the earnings of the sector is. So I cannot see how that could be measured in substance to the amount Linden, under the conditions that exist, is being a burden, more so than what you see now. So for our sugar workers, for our sugar worker brothers and sisters in the sugar belt, they have to know the reasons and why they are protesting and demanding. We knew why we were protesting and demanding to ensure those subsidies remain, because we understood our economic value, not only of what we contributed to the state in the past, but currently where the people found themselves in terms of not having any economic expansion within the community.
You know, when I asked Mr. Samuel Hinds, what would be his legacy if when he reflects and put aside the entire Guyana, but just Region 10, what would be his legacy? Because the unemployment rate at that time in 2011, 2012 was over 70%. He couldn't respond to anything proper as to his legacy. But he did mention, to his credit, he did mention computer classes for 1 week or 2 weeks for retrenched workers.
I think if you ask that same,
how do you find that?
I think if you ask that same question, and the poll is taken by every Linden person in Region 10, and without even putting before them the answers, they will tell you the legacy of Sam Hinds would be the dead men who were murdered by the state, Shemrai, Allen, and Ron. That is Sam Hinds' legacy. The 3 men that were murdered by the state, for which a commission of inquiry report clearly stated, and mind you, I heard him mention about this commission of inquiry report. This was a commission that was established by the PUP government. The region had absolutely no involvement in who those commissioners were. The region had absolutely no say in what the TORs, the terms of reference of how that commission was going to be functioning. And that commission, nevertheless, found it difficult to avoid the obvious, that it was the state and the police force directed by the state, and not necessarily the commissioner of police, who the report noted was not in contact with his officers on the day of the shooting, but the Minister of Home Affairs, Clement Roy, then minister, who was in contact with those officers. 2 phone calls that were made that murdered those young men and injured several dozen, and had an entire community under siege for over 4 weeks. That is Sam Hinds' legacy.
Mr. Samuel Hinds, if you're listening, you get it straight up, your legacy. And he was very cold-blooded. He was very callous. I recall interviewing him, and I couldn't understand why he was behaving that way at all. But after
conscience, Mark, it's conscience. He knew exactly what he did, and I listened to him carefully last night. And he could not avoid even saying that what he did was wrong. You know, he still holds out that persons wanted to get into the interior because months before they had planned trips to get into the interior. What an out of touch man. That here it is, the situation on the ground have drastically changed, even for those people who have bought tickets to get into the interior. You now had 3 men dead before you, and the then Prime Minister could not even pause in his approach of speaking to acknowledge their deaths. He went straight to the fact that these people had tickets to go into the interior months before. That is the sort of, I wouldn't even call it cold-blooded. I call it out of touch, without reality. It is even surprising that we have Sam Hinds as our ambassador at one of the most important multilateral institutions representing Guyana. It is most unfortunate.
Well said, Mr. Sharma Solomon, and well said. I want to ask you this question, sir. It's a ticklish question, but it's important. We all understand how the PPP feels about not just Linden, but Region 10. And I'm a Lindener, and I'm offended. And I have seen the evidence for the 20-something years that they've been in office. And when people thought that Sam Hinds, after he was rescued, he came to Linden from Myconi as a malnutrition youth, very, very skinny with a slippers, 2 different sides. The people of Linden rescued him, fed him, nurtured him. He got fat. He started a family. He enjoyed that good treatment for decades. To have turned his back on the people of Linden and Region 10, the bauxite workers, the pensioners, everyone, the young people, he turned his back on the people of Linden and Region 10. And so did his government. It appears that they were practicing what Lincoln Lewis coined as economic genocide in Linden, in Region 10. There's no question about that. Economic genocide against the people there. And we know who most of those people are. Let me ask you this, though, sir. One thought, or would have actually gotten the impression that the coalition, here it is that Linden, Region 10, people like you work, Vanessa Kissoon, others work, Aubrey Norton, others work, young people work to bring home that victory for the PNC. People expected that the coalition would have or should have done more for the people of Linden, Kokwani, Ituni, and other areas in Region 10 as a former chairman of that region. Would you agree with that assessment that very little was done and more should have been done under the PNC, the coalition?
Let me start first by saying no community should ever be taken for granted politically. In 2006, this point was made quite clearly by the people of Linden and Region 10, who solidly voted for the PNC. And on the arrival of the Alliance for Change, shifted. Unfortunately, the Alliance for Change had their seats stolen by the PPP, by the said Sam Hinds. And I think we saw coming out of the 2011 as the change dynamics evolved with new persons entering the party and a more progressive approach with the APNU and the sort of broad-based building that was done. And let me say that we are not new to coalition politics, Mark, because we took that APNU concept further in how we approach moving the region and collectively embracing after the 2012 struggles. Persons like yourself and even people like Nigel Hughes, who accompanied us to North America. And again, I can't help extend on behalf of the people of Region 10 kind thank you, Mark Benchcop, for ensuring that we were well accommodated. We had our matters well ventilated to those congressional representatives, even as far as the State Department. So we were practicing coalition politics even when we were at the agreement and engagement with the government. We had representatives from the WPA. We had again Nigel, who was there as one of our legal counsel. Aubrey Norton was there as part of the team, leading in terms of the negotiations. So we had that sort of spirit in 2015. I think politically taken for granted was when we moved pro 2015, and those elements were absent. And then the representation that was expected with regards to what the region desired and deserved was not given. And I think that too reflected what you saw 2006 prior 2015. The political leadership took the region for granted in what the region wanted and what the people requested. One. And two, in not having devices there to ensure that the continuity of the things that we were struggling for coming out from 2011, coming out from 2015, were the things to fulfill the economic advancement of the community and to ensure that there is economic expansion in the areas of manufacturing, tourism, agriculture. Those things were not requested by the people who were eventually there. And we see the results of that in 2020. For the first time, the PPP got 3,000 votes at the elections in Region 10. So it is not for me only to say whether more could have been done. I am certain the coalition recognizes and acknowledges a lot more could have been done. But it is also a reflection of where the voters, like in 2006, demonstrated that they were not satisfied with what was done.
Oh yes, well said, well said. This togetherness, this team effort spirit, team spirit. Sorry, and it's so sad that it is not to say that a lot wasn't done under the coalition compared to the 23 horrible, depressed years of the PPP regime. And in 1 year, we're seeing the same. We're looking at the time, Mr. Solomon, and I know our listeners, they would love to stay on for another hour or so.
I'm like you, Mark. I've been closing doors just like you, and we know why we've been closing doors, right?
And I just want our listeners to know, because some of them are very touchy. When we say we are like the same, we have been closing doors. We're talking about the little ones around.
Yes, you have a 4-year-old. I have a 3-year-old. So we're closing doors. I just bolted the door.
Well, I can't bolt the door. My daughter just stepped in my office and she came around to the computer and she's trying to be smart, right? Which is good. She says, "Dad, can I give you a hug?" And she's looking at the computer screen, right?
I have the same situation, Mark. So I know what you're dealing with.
What is, I mean, we know mistakes were made, man. Lots of mistakes, but they also did a heck of a lot of good things, right?
Certainly, Mark. You can point, and I most unfortunate that we see most of the things that were done, whether it's to build social cohesion, bridging the digital divide, to ensure that the interland and the coastland and these areas don't feel left out. I've always, when I campaigned, and even as chairman, you go to some communities and you say to people that the people in Linden children are no more important than the people in Aichuni or Kokwani. And that's a true statement. It means if you have been given the authority and the political scope to help, then you have to ensure that there's some sort of equal treatment. And I think that was an opportunity that was looked at. The coalition made some efforts for that. We can only see that, for example, in the expansion of the capital towns. It was also an opportunity to see how you could have ensured power is given not only from the central, but to ensure that you had these even divisional commanders that would be now in every region, every town, and accountable to not only the regional chairman, but the mayors. So these are very good structural approaches. We saw even in the judiciary some confirmations being made. We saw attempts at some of the structural, and one of the things that you know, as someone who did some amount of sociology, is that there is a structure culture relationship. And I always tell people, don't take that for granted, because when we have these structures that are repaired and are fixed, it allows for culture to build a different culture of how we want to see society. So look at what is happening now in the society. We've returned to where those structures are collapsing, the structure of law and order, where if those structures don't work, then you have a culture of the society where anything goes, where the law is lawless, where people feel intimidated and threatened. We see a former assistant commissioner putting on public record that his life is endangered. So you cannot deny that some of the structural deficiencies over 23 years created by the PPP were not being addressed by the coalition.
Well said, Mr. Sharma Solomon. As our operator just, Lemon, was kind enough to show us here many years ago. Let me say to some of the Aubrey Norton folks, look, Aubrey, look at Aubrey there. And this was when we were preparing to head to Washington, D.C.
Yes, this is when we were going to meet Ms. Swift at the State Department to bring our concerns of human rights violation that were taking place not only in Linden and Guyana, not only in Linden and Region 10, but the wider Guyana with extrajudicial killings and all the other things that were occurring in Guyana at the time.
And we were able to meet with some Congress representatives and senators.
Yes, we met with Congressman Hakeem Jeffries at the time, and even Congresswoman Yvette Clark, and some other people that brought about some very focused eyes on what was taking place in Guyana at the time, and I'm certain would have resulted in the international community demonstrating that in 2015, they too had enough of the PPP.
Oh, yes, they had enough of the PPP indeed. And even on that trip, as we prepare to wind down this evening, we stopped right there in front of the White House.
Yes, we did. And if you notice that poster depicts quite clearly one of the things that I started the program by saying. Sam Hinds is fortunate that he is given a voice even in the view of straight up that to date, Linden is still with one TV station, and the people of Linden are having their voices not given to them as outlined in the Constitution that allows for people to have access to information uninterrupted and unimpeded by the state. And today we see the state doing exactly that.
The same thing indeed. The same thing indeed. And a lot of these guys, they like to come on shows like these to give their side, but yet they shut out people from going on NCN and other stations and so forth, controlled by them. It is so ironic, right? You know, Mr. Solomon, you mentioned the situation with Linden. No TV station, no radio station in terms of, other than they have one right now, or maybe two, or maybe an online station as well. But, it is so sad that under the coalition government, none, absolutely none of those things were corrected. And I'm upset about that.
It's the most disappointing thing, Mark. I don't think you can be more disappointed than I am. Not only blood, sweat, and tears went into the agreement to ensure those things were fulfilled, but we had started the process. Persons like Pastor Maurice McKinnon, Pastor Selwyn Sills, we had Miss Gloria Britton, we had Mr. Leslie Gonzalez. We had a very good team that had started a committee Our lawyer then would have been Mr. Roysdale Ford,
But you can't leave
who
out Lincoln Lewis in that process.
Lincoln Lewis.
Yeah.
Well, those were people who helped us along with Aslin Paris, and we had gotten the infrastructure up through the community. We'd raised the funds, and we had gotten on air just before the 2015 elections. We had started to broadcast and transmit our own programs. So it is quite unfortunate that today the infrastructure that was built, the organization that was established, were all dismantled, and we're back to square one. Most unfortunate.
It's so I'm very upset about that too. I recall having many conversations with you, Mr. Chairman, when you were chairman there, with Lincoln Lewis and others, and I just wish today that you guys had turned that television station on and had
we did, Mark. We did. And that's all I'm going to say. We did. Under my tenure, we did. The PVP, through Sam Hinds and others, I can say to you today, I still have the sign that we took down from the site up at Richmond Hill that marked property of NCN. We took that down. We went ahead. We constructed that building. We placed the equipment into that building, and we actually transmitted. So we did our part. It started, it worked, and I where it is after now, I think those who took over from us in terms of the management of the region and those who are there now should be asked that question quite clearly. What happened? But we did our part.
And let me ask you this before I go. I noticed some of the comment section, and people love to blame Granger for everything. But there are some things that he should be blamed for. Heck yes, I agree with that. But for everything, man, here's my final question to you, Mr. Sharma. Well, not necessarily. I still have one more for you. Should Mr. Granger be blamed for what happened with the TV station there, that the license wasn't awarded? Should he be blamed? Let's hear.
I did some studies, Mark, and I know what power represents. And power carries elements. And as a regional chairman, the power was given to me to do a few things. And those elements include charisma. I don't know if I was that charismatic. But the other three important elements of power would carry authority, force, and also the ability to get things done. Notwithstanding who was there, and that's the point I'm making, as chairman of the region, we had a constitutional obligation to represent our people, notwithstanding who was there. And we took that with the power invested in us to ensure that the people had a transmitted television station weeks before the 2015 election. I think it requires the same attitude of those who were there to ensure that we had that television station up and running. So whether it should have been a collective effort and whether you had higher authority involved, those in the constituency, those who had the authority, those who were given the constitutional power, should have ensured that today the people of Linden and Region 10, like we were doing, had an independent voice, an independent television station, so that they can express their views as outlined in the Constitution without any interruption or any impediments.
Well said. But at that time, based on my source, there were two licenses to be included in some of the others that they awarded. A license for Ben Shop Radio and a license for Linden Television. I don't know what happened to your license, but what I do know, Mr. Solomon, that there were elements within senior folks within the coalition who weren't in favor of me getting a radio license. And I'm making this public again. It is sad that you guys haven't gotten a license. And yes, the buck stops right on top there with Mr. Granger. right? Even though
Well,
he may say there was a process, but I was made to understand that that license was actually there because I contacted someone who headed the Guyana National Broadcasting Authority, who did say, but the blame went somewhere else, not to Mr. Granger, but somewhere else. But I must also add, Mr., and you're smiling, I must also add that even 6 months after I was issued with my license to operate this radio station, my frequency was taken away from me and my license was also taken away from me under the coalition. But you were smiling. Go ahead.
Mark, I talk about power, right? And our power wasn't just an individual power. Our power was people power. So I can say this to you, we were able to transmit notwithstanding the PPP's government in power, because the power of the people is more than any government power. And that is the point. The situation in Linden at the time, if people really wanted to have a television station, they could have had a television station. And no amount of license. Think of it this way. At one point in our history, slavery was legal. And people needed a license to say whether they were going to abolish slavery or not. It didn't make slavery the right thing. Those rights are enshrined in the Constitution. So though there is need for a license and the paperwork, your rights to have access to information is bigger than any piece of paper. And that is how we saw our efforts to ensure that not only what we struggled for in the 2012 agreement, but what we were representing as the rights of our citizens were honored by any government. We were prepared to ensure that those issues that we had on the table were fulfilled, even if it meant operating outside of a license, because that was not going to take away the rights of our citizens.
Well said. And sometimes I made that point about what the coalition did to my radio license and my frequency, so that to demonstrate to the people, those hardcore PNC supporters, that irrespective of what they did to me under the coalition, that I haven't personalized things. I could have easily thrown the APNU, the coalition, and everybody under the bus. I could have easily said to hell with them, because they took away my original frequency and give it to Demerara Waves. They took away my license. I don't know, man. I don't know, but it happens. I'm still here and I'm still batting for them. I'm still batting for them. The same radio station that they took away the license, I'm still batting for them.
And unfortunately, the television station in Linden cannot even speak for them at the moment.
Unfortunately, indeed. Before we go, this final question, briefly. 3 persons are out there running for the leader, to become the leader.
Four, Mark.
Well, one didn't say that they're running for leader. They want another position. But
well, I saw the village vice, and I saw Miss Amanza Walton demonstrating that she has an interest in running for leader. This is the second program that I've witnessed overlooked that. I don't know if it is because it's not public, but I saw it in one of the other print mediums. So maybe that should be clarified. But as far as I've gotten the impression, I'm not on the ground, that there are 4 persons who are contending for the candidacy of leadership.
Okay, then. There's a 4th person. Thank you for that correction. There's a 4th person. Francis Bristow says here, Mark Benchup just said his radio license was taken away from him by the APNU. By the coalition, yes, it was. It was. My frequency, my original frequency, was taken away from me by the coalition. Yet during the aftermath of the elections, 2020 elections, when Pompeo was threatening people left, right, and center, lots of them in the hierarchy of the coalition just went into hiding. Lots of them. They weren't speaking for about 2 weeks, but it is what it is. I'm still here as a soldier batting. Before we go, do you have a horse in the race?
The membership is my horse. At this moment, we are working to ensure the membership of the party is well organized. We faced in 2014 what a disorganized membership can result in. And it is the membership who will identify the delegates. Now, I know there are many popular Facebook and social media promotions. And Mark Benchcap, you're a witness to the fact in 2017 when you made your efforts for the mayoral candidacy and the position in Georgetown. I don't think anybody could have gotten more Facebook likes and more Facebook forward than Mark Benchcap. I'm not knocking you, Mark Benchcap.
You're throwing shade at me, and I will fight back. That is so true, Mister.
But you got one seat of a total of over 20 plus seats that are available on the city council.
You know why? You know why it was an easy walk for me, and I'll say that.
I hear that, Mark.
It was an easy walk because my good friend David Granger and all of them in the APNU, AFC, PNC, and all of them got at their rallies and they say, in other words, don't vote for Ben Sharp. And I'm saying this to our listeners, that as much as the leadership, including my good friend David Arthur Granger, was against me and told people, don't vote for Ben Sharp, I'm still batting for them. So it's
I hear that.
I'm still batting for them.
But my point is, as somebody who is a committed party member, a card don't make you a member if your heart is in the right place. As a committed party member, I can say to you, our job is to ensure the membership is given the opportunity to identify our delegates. And there is where our focus is on the moment, to ensure that the delegates are given the opportunity to identify the leadership. And not just the leader, but the leadership of the party.
Mr. Sharma Solomon, I just wish you had your membership card. It is vindictive. It is spiteful that nobody really fought for you guys. No one. And I'm not buying this thing, wait until elections, Congress done. And I'm not buying that. Nobody fought for you guys that I'm aware of. Absolutely no one. It's a shame and a disgrace. What is it? Other people have gotten their party cards of recent, couple days, couple weeks ago. But to leave you and Miss Vanessa Kisoon out is downright spiteful. But next time around, you guys will be there.
Well, we see what leaving us out resulted in 2020. We were left out. We were included in 2011. We were part of 2015. We had our hands lifted high on the stage. And we saw the repercussions of leaving us out, not only a defeat, but an advancement of the PPP in Region 10. Moving beyond, we were reducing those votes. In 2006, the votes of PPP went up to about 2,007. We brought that down to just about 2,000. And now it's back up to 3,000 plus votes. So for those who think leaving us out is the wise thing to do, that they can do to their own expense and to the expense of the party in the wider context to the nation.
Mr. Sharma Solomon, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your contributions. Give my regards to all your family, your beautiful family, and also your mom. Give her my regards. Thank you for being strong. You will become a member soon again, a party member. Thank you so much.
Card bearing member. I am
a card bearing member.
Thank you for having me on your program, Mark, and send you the same regards to your family.
Thank you,
and everyone.
I will do. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sharma Solomon there. And I've said sometimes you don't want to say too much publicly. Because you guys don't know what happens behind the scene and what people may have endured and so forth and so on. And I oftentimes say to people, some people are shocked that, yes, under the coalition government, they took away my license. Under the coalition government, they took away back my frequency. They give it to Demerara Waves and all these things. And even an application to broadcast in Linden. There's nothing. Even an application to broadcast in Borbice, still nothing, but I'm not saying anything. I'm still batting for them so far, right? And even Mr. Granger, who said, support somebody else, support the coalition. don't support Ben Sharp for the mayorship of Georgetown. It's okay. He's still my friend. It shows that I hold no grudge, none whatsoever, political grudge. But if you're going to oppress me in other ways, then it is difficult for me to just forgive you like that. But the leadership of the coalition, I was able to forgive them. Because it is politics. But I also remember when I was constructively criticizing the coalition, a lot of you right now who are throwing on Mr. David Granger under the bus, you're abusing you out, cussing you out. The same, some of you, I know who some of you are, abusing out Joseph Frederick Harmon right now, cussing him out. Y'all weren't doing that in 2015 leading up to the elections. Y'all weren't doing that right after the elections. Y'all were there batting for him and cussing up Ben Sharp and cussing up David Hinds and cussing up Lincoln Lewis and others because we were seeing things. Mind you, we were seeing things and we wanted betterment for everybody. We wanted things to be done. But no, y'all were cussing Ben Sharp, cussing this body, cussing the body. And now poor Ben Sharp get caught up in the crossfire. Y'all want Ben Sharp cuss the very people that y'all were cussing me about. So I must join y'all and cuss Granger. I must join y'all and cuss Harmon. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it at all. I'm just not going to do it. I set aside the personal things that happened to me under the coalition, and I can go on and on with more. But before I go, let me take this opportunity. That's a shake hand, a genuine shake hand. Ben Sharp and his shades again, right? Let me take this time out. I might be a CFAR kind of guy, right? I might be a CFAR kind of guy. I must be. But I want to thank David Arthur Granger for his leadership. I want to thank him for his many years as a military man to Guyana, his service to the country. He wasn't a perfect president, but he did a heck of a lot when compared to the 20 plus years of the PPPC oppressive regime. More could have been done under his presidency. More could have been done. But as we reflect, during those 5 years, lots of problems, because it was a coalition, but he did a heck of a lot of good things. And so, am I pleased with the outcome of the elections and the fact that we have an installed regime? No, I'm not pleased. Could more be, could we have had more done? Sorry? Yes. There are some things that I'm upset about, just like you guys. But I'm not going to throw Mr. Granger under the bus at all. I'm just not going to do that. He has made some mistakes, yes, but I'm not going to throw him under the bus. Mr. Granger, thank you for your service. Thank you for your leadership of the PNCR. And I'm sure that whomever the next person to become the leader of the People's National Congress reform, whether it is Dr. Richard Van West Charles, whether it is Aubrey Compton Norton, or whether it is Mr. Harmon, good luck to all of them, or whomever else, because nomination day is the 11th. Good luck to all of them. I have no horse in the race, at least not now. Thank you for your service to Guyana, and thank you for your service for humanity. Now, I may be a CFAR man, that is why I'm saying this. And that is why I have this photograph up, to say that as much as some of you say he's my friend, he is my friend. As much as he was against me on some things, he still is my friend. I'm not going to throw him under the bus. God bless you all. God bless our beautiful, beautiful country. I will be back tomorrow. right here. Same place, same time. So long.
That little ditty we used to torment our teachers with when we were kids goes something like this. Onward, upward, Mary had a go. Day by day she tied it to a rope, till at length they got past the rope, and Miss Mary had to run behind it. We had a lot of fun with that, but do you actually know how beautiful these words are? Here's the Song of Guyana's Children by W. Hawley Bryant. Born in the land of the mighty Roraima, land of great rivers and far-stretching sea, so like the mountains, the sea, and the river, great, wide, and deep in our lives would we be. Onward, upward, may we ever go, day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana's sons and daughters can be.